All right, we're a little late today. We're actually a lot late today, like 10 minutes past where I wanted to start. But that's just what happens sometimes. Sometimes it's a little tougher to get up and get going than you thought it would be. Listen, I think I say this every week. There's no Harlan though, so I can't blame him, but it just truly was my fault. So whatever, I'll take 100% of the heat. But I had a few things to do to get ready for this. This is you guys' thing, though, today. Like, I want to talk about a few things. I have a few things kind of on my mind that we can talk about. Some good news, I think, for FSU. But this is on y'all today. So don't let me down. I want a lot of participation. I just spilled a little coffee, so we're already off to that start. A lot of participation, a lot of questions, a lot of comments. We can do a few complaints. Not too many complaints. It's a Friday and we're 4-0. Listen, I think the first thing we need to talk about is why some people in this fan base are so miserable. No, I know it's not you guys. I know you guys are not the miserable ones. But why are some people... They act like they've never been here before. Maybe they just started being a fan. I don't know. But they're miserable, guys. I don't get that. Appreciate you guys that are tuned in. I'm certainly not talking to y'all. Y'all are not the miserable ones. You guys are the ones that have it together. I appreciate you all. Not trying to talk crap to you folks. But there's some miserable people here. 4-0. I think we have the best. I think I've said this. I think we said this on Sunday when we did kind of our recap. I think Florida State has the best resume in the country. Is that crazy? Who else has Texas beat? So Texas beat Alabama. Texas schedule 2023. So Texas got some good games coming up. Kansas this week. Baylor, was that a good win for Texas? I guess that was a good win. They beat Rice. That's not impressive. They struggle with Wyoming. That's not impressive. Beating Alabama is impressive. Don't get me wrong. Is it a lot more impressive than beating LSU? I don't know. Kind of manhandling Baylor? I don't know. Is 38-6 more impressive than an overtime win in Death Valley? Is beating Alabama by 10 points more impressive than beating LSU by 21? I don't know. Texas is probably the only one that's close. Is that fair? Texas has a good resume. Ohio State has a good win, beating Notre Dame. But that's pretty much it, right? The rest of their schedule has been kind of lackluster. Indiana, Western Kentucky, and who's the other one in there? Somebody terrible. Somebody not worth remembering. But you're 4-0. Complaints about how we've looked, but I think the idea of, hey, the team hasn't looked very good, but they're still winning and winning big games is... I don't know, right? It's the old glass half full, glass half empty thing. I guess if you're a pessimist, you say, hey, the team doesn't look good. They might not look good later in the year and it might cost them. Sure. Or you could do the thing where you say, hey, the team doesn't look very good, but they're still beating top 5 teams, top 10 teams that Clemson should have been ranked, you know. They've got the equivalent of about 2 ranked wins right now. I don't know how many other people have that. I don't know if anybody else has that. So glass half full, glass half empty. I'm a little bit glass half full. I'll say this. I think Florida State played their best ball down the stretch last year. I think they played their best ball down the stretch the year before in 2021, obviously. They went 5-7, but they started out 0-4. They went 5-3 down the stretch with losses in 3 games they were underdogs in. They covered the spread. Well, minus that last Clemson play. I guess that pushed the spread. But I think they've shown that they play better in the second half of years. They play better down the stretch. They play better as the year goes on. You don't have that. I remember last year calling October Hell Month, and you obviously didn't have a very good October with Wake, Clemson, and NC State in 3 weeks. I guess I mixed those up. Wake, NC State, and then Clemson. But you don't have that this year. You get through your toughest stretch, And there is tough stuff upcoming. I think Miami's better than we thought. I think Duke's better than anyone would have predicted. I think Florida presents some unique challenges. I don't think it's ever easy to go into the swamp and play a game. But I still like Florida State to win all those games. I think Pitt's probably a little easier than you were expecting. I think Wake is certainly worse than you thought. Virginia Tech is terrible. You could probably start Brock, well, not Brock if he's hurt, but Tate or AJ and win that game comfortably. Hand off 200 times. Let's say 60 times. We probably won't going to run 200 plays. But I think schedule's about what you thought it was. Maybe Miami's a little tougher. Maybe Pitt's a little easier. I think Florida's still yet to be determined. I think their game against their game against Kentucky is really interesting tomorrow. For the Noles not playing, I think there's a lot that I'm interested in seeing tomorrow on the schedule. And we pull up the college football schedule of what's going on tomorrow. That Florida-Kentucky game is kind of at the top of my list. I think Louisville-NC State's really interesting. Two teams that Florida State doesn't play, but that's a good one tonight, by the way. If you don't have plans, I really like the NC State-Louisville game. Louisville 4-0. They're kind of rolling through people and look really good at times. NC State didn't look good last week, but found a way against Virginia. Yeah, Kentucky-Florida is interesting to me. I think that Florida game is – so Florida to me, like they're going to struggle against Georgia, LSU, and us, right? I don't think anybody would deny that. I don't. Could they upset LSU or us? Yeah, if either one of those teams play a bad game, they absolutely could. They've got a lot of talent. But you look at the rest of their schedule, and as down as we all are on Florida, if they beat Kentucky, I think Kentucky's as good as everybody else on their schedule outside of those three games. Like I think LSU, FSU, and UGA are losses. But if they beat Kentucky, they can beat South Carolina. If they beat Kentucky and South Carolina, they can beat Missouri. They can beat Arkansas. Now, I'm not saying those are sure wins, but I think the Florida game's important against Kentucky this weekend. Now, if they lose to Kentucky, I think all those other games are games that they could potentially lose too. I think they've got a lot of coin flips. But if they beat Kentucky, I think they show that they can go on the road and win a tough game against a good opponent. Kentucky's 4-0. They haven't played anybody good yet. I think that's interesting to watch out for. You certainly don't. I mean, Florida's recruiting well right now anyway. You certainly don't want Florida going out and going 8-4. Yeah, they're going to lose to us and LSU and Georgia, but if they go 8-4, that's a good little turnaround for them. You'd certainly like to see Kentucky win this weekend to keep that down. You lose to Kentucky, beat Vandy, lose to South Carolina, then you go into UGA. You play UGA and LSU in back-to-back weeks. That could spell doom for Florida. So some games. What else you guys looking to watch this weekend? I think A&M at Arkansas is an interesting one just because of the Jimbo factor. Clemson-Syracuse, a massive noon game. So listen, I try not to flex too much, but I think my greatest flex in life outside of my kids is the 3 TV setup that I've got out on my back patio. I bought like the 3 cheapest TVs that I could find that would take up the whole wall at Best Buy. I didn't even really spend that much money on them, but it's still like my favorite part of the house, and it's not even inside. But the 3 TVs are going to be Florida, Kentucky, Clemson, Syracuse, and then USC, Colorado. I think there's a fun little noon slate. Clemson, Syracuse is interesting. Clemson's a touchdown favorite on the road in Syracuse. They're Syracuse 4-0, but man, I think that's a fake 4-0. Remember last year when we played Syracuse and they were like, 6-0 or 7-0? And they just hadn't played anybody like with a pulse yet. I think that might be what we see this weekend. I like Clemson given the points. I really think Clemson found something last week. I thought they played really well, and I'm interested to see that Clemson-Syracuse game tomorrow. Obviously, we play Syracuse in a few weeks, so important to see how that goes down. But I think Clemson comes out and beats them pretty good. Georgia-Auburn's maybe fun. I don't know. I have no confidence that Auburn can keep up with them after A&M just put the hammer down on them last weekend. As far as other stuff that's potentially interesting, just with a slight impact on Florida State, I don't think there's a ton until you get to the night game. Notre Dame at Duke, I think, is interesting. I think Duke is a good story. I think they lose that and lose some of their luster. Now, if they can find a way to upset Notre Dame, I think things get interesting against them in a couple of weeks. I think it kind of does prove that they are legit. I just don't think that they do. I don't think that they can find a way to get it done. The other ACC games this week, I just don't. I mean, they just have no impact on Florida State. Virginia, Boston College, who cares? Bowling Green, Georgia Tech, who cares? Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech. I know we play Pittsburgh down the road, but Virginia Tech, it's hard to pull anything away from that. But anyway, yeah, some stuff that I think is important to kind of keep an eye out on. Florida, Duke, a couple of games that look like they'll be fun. Florida, Duke, Clemson, Syracuse. Those are the three games that probably have the biggest impact on Florida State if you're trying to watch this weekend and look for something. But yeah, I don't know why people are miserable. We'll get to some good news here in a second. I don't know why people are so miserable after a 4-0 start. Everybody in this fan base, if I'd have offered you, hey, 3-1, you're guaranteed 3-1. Like, you're going to have a chance at the playoff after the first 4 games. I'm not saying you would have just immediately taken it because you would have really liked the chance to get to 4-0. But, man, there are a lot of people that wouldn't have taken like a 3-1 with a close loss in one of those first 2 games. And now we're 4-0 and people are miserable. I just don't understand that as much. I love you guys. I think you're amazing. But being miserable after being 4-0 is funny to me. I just think the Noles are going to play better down the stretch. You can obviously tell that having Dent out there is really limiting the defense. You can tell that Jordan being banged up is not what's most ideal there. Having some offensive linemen have to rotate in and out, not having Smith. I just think you've had some issues. You've played some physical games, and now you've got a bye week and then a very bad Virginia Tech game to kind of get your groove back. Get that second half LSU groove back, that second half Southern Miss groove back, and kind of go from there. Man, I've rewatched the Clemson game a couple of times, and as low as I have been on our running game, as low as I've been on the rushing attack, I'm kind of encouraged rewatching the game because I think we did some things fairly well. I know it didn't translate a lot. But that Clemson defensive line is ridiculous. Like, they are really, really good. And you're not going to see another defensive line like that this year. Maybe the next best one is Florida's. But the big thing with Florida is, like, how much do they care by the end of the year? What does their season look like? And Florida's defensive line is nowhere near as good as Clemson's. And that's not even a shot at UF. Like, we'll take all the shots at UF that we can. But, I think it's good news for Florida State that you got out of that game against Clemson and you couldn't run the ball worth crap. I get it, but I think that you're not going to see another – I know that you're not going to see another defensive line like that until you potentially are in the playoff. Florida's defensive line also is really good against the run, similar to Clemson's in that regard. They're not very good against the pass. They don't do a very good job of putting a lot of pressure on teams. They got the benefit of going up against a Tennessee team that was down 2 or 3 starters on the offensive line. So as discouraged as I was live in person and then through the beginning part of this week with Florida State's run game, I do think that improves as the season goes on. I think having Smith and Scott back will be super helpful. Man, people want Jordan to keep the ball at times. I think there were times where I don't think Jordan ever made like the wrong I don't say ever. I think that Jordan very rarely made the wrong read, like where he should have pulled the ball and he ended up handing it off. I think Clemson was guarding against Jordan's legs more. Like, if you go back and watch the tape, anytime there was an option play, Jordan did the right thing by handing it off because they had a linebacker and an end that were playing safe and staying home for those quarterback keeps. Their middle just was better than ours. Like, they it's kind of like on NCAA. You remember, if you guys would play the NCAA video game, if you ran an option, if you just read the defensive end right, you were picking up the first down. Like that, it was an overpowered play. Like, you cannot stop it. It's like a quarterback sneak on the 1 yard line, right? And so that wasn't the case against Clemson. They were staying home for the quarterback run, and their 4 guys were better than your 5. You're not going to see that too many times, right? teams are going to have to cheat a little more. They're going to have to let Jordan go, or they're going to, they're like UF, Miami, Pittsburgh, obviously Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Duke. Like none of those defensive lines are going to be able to do what Clemson was able to do against us, which is good news. Like I think that's a good thing that you don't have to go up against a defensive line that's that good again. Clemson's linebackers are some of the best in the country. They played the run really, really well. And you found a way to win without playing your best, playing against the best defense you're going to play all year. And so I'm not ready to just, fire our run game into the moon. Now, if they look like crap against Virginia Tech in 8 days, if they look like crap against a bad Syracuse defense, if they can't run the ball on Duke and Pitt and Wake, I'm going to have some concerns. Miami, Florida, those are going to be tough games, no doubt about it. But if they can't run the ball against some of these weak teams, I think we have an issue. I think what you're looking at now is when you look at the rest of the season, you have what I would say are two tough games. And when you consider the rivalry, I think you've got two tough games when you consider that Miami's probably a little better than you were expecting. I think that Florida probably has the ability to be better. I think there's still a lot to be undetermined there, but I think you can call a spade a spade. Florida looks really, really good at times and then really, really bad at times. I thought they looked great against Tennessee, and they come out and kick 5 field goals against Charlotte. Florida State's really good in the red zone. So I think that game is it's so far away too, right? What do you got, like 9 weeks until you get there? You got a long way to go until that one happens. 8 weeks, I guess, because we've played 4. But anyway, all right, let's give some love to Garnet and Gold. GarnetandGold.com. If you're shopping for FSU gear anywhere, you should be using the code NOSLAW, NOSLAW, at Garnet and Gold. You get 15% off of checkout. They give back to our boosters. They give back to NIL. They've employed thousands and thousands of FSU students down throughout the years. Make sure that you're shopping at Garnet and Gold using code NOSLAW, NOSLAW. It's actually 5% more than the booster discount, so don't use that in the store. Use this online and then go pick up in the store if you're local. So shout out Garnet and Gold for all that they do to support us. Florida State gets some good news this week, and we had kind of alluded to this and said that it was a possibility, but I think getting Darl Jackson for the stretch run, getting him back for a potential playoff matchup would be massive. I thought Florida State played really well against Clemson's run game for what it's worth. Clemson's got a good offensive line. They've got 2 incredibly challenging backs to try and, fight against. And I know Maffa had the really big run right before the Deloach forced fumble, sack, touchdown. But outside of that 46-yard run, Maffa had 10 carries for 23 yards, so he's going at about 2.3 a carry. I'm sorry, 9 carries for 23 yards, so a little bit more, like 2.5 yards a carry. Shipley went 18 carries for 67 yards. If you take away his long rush of 16, he went 17 carries for, what would that be, 51 yards? It's 3 up. That's 3 a carry, exactly. So you held those guys down pretty good, like an average of 2.8 a carry between those two, outside of the 2 big gashing runs that they kind of had. I thought you played really well against their run. Now, you can't be giving up a 46-yard run to Maffa like you did, and you want to try and limit the 16-yard runs against Shipley as much as you can. But if this defensive line can continue to play pretty well against a really good, again, how many offensive lines are you going to see that are better than Clemson's this year? Well, maybe Miami's. Miami's got a good offensive line that's gelling pretty good, some good 5-stars on that line. I'm not guaranteeing that Miami's is better, but I know their running backs aren't as good. Like, I'm not worried about Miami's running game at all. So if you play that well against Clemson's offensive line and running game, there's not another rushing attack that you're going to see until you get to potentially the playoff that you're super worried about. If you add Jackson in there as well, who I've been continuing to hear really, really good things on in practice. I heard this. I don't know what I can really share or not, but let me think about some wording here. I heard that Jackson was struggling a little bit just with kind of being down. I think this is fine. If not, there's not many people in here, so it's fine. Hey, like the video if you're watching this, and I'm going to tell you something that might get me in trouble. Actually, you know what? I'm tired of worried about what's going to get in trouble. Yeah, screw this. I'll tell you guys. Just hit the like button on the video, though, as a way to say thanks. I heard that Jackson was kind of down a little bit after, the denial and the, we recalibrated and tried to appeal. And then the NCAA, was a horse's ass again, and they said no for a second time. I heard he was pretty down. And I think there was some concern around just him staying in it mentally. Can you imagine like transferring and doing it the right way and being told like, hey, you're doing it the right way. It was before rules changed. And then like after you make a decision, after you enroll, like the rules change and you're basically told like, hey, you can't play. So that's brutal. And excuse me. And I could understand a kid getting kind of down about that. I can understand a kid like struggling with that mentally. But shout out to Odell, shout out to Josh Farmer, shout out to a lot of the defensive staff that has kind of rallied around him. I think fan support meant a lot. I think it meant a lot to him that you guys and the fans and people on social media and stuff were like kind of fighting for him, even though it didn't end up, the NCAA doesn't care about kids and doesn't care about their mental health at all. And so they didn't change their decision. I do think that it was important to him that he did feel a lot of that love. He did feel a lot of that support, even though the NCAA basically said, screw him. So I think that was big. And so I'm glad that he has kept his mind, because that would have been a very easy spot for a kid to just be like, throw your hands up and say, screw it. So I think that was big. Florida State getting him back for the potential playoffs or even a bowl game, right? I mean, I know that we'd be a little underwhelmed at this point if we just went to a New Year's Six bowl. Based on the expectations and the way we started this season. But if you're able to go to the playoff, getting him back for those couple of games would be huge. There's some questions around the ACC championship. Could that be a potential? It's tough. Florida State's semester ends after the ACC championship. So would his semester be over? Like, could he finish up his classes? I think that's a little more gray. I haven't seen anything super, super definitive one way or the other. But I think that'd be something to watch out for. You got him back for the ACC championship. That said, unless you play Clemson again, I really don't worry about anybody in the ACC championship. Maybe Miami, if they really did run the table and their only loss was to you, maybe Miami would kind of present like a challenge and a rematch. But I think the precedent has been set. If you go into the ACC championship 12-0, I mean, they did it with TCU last year. I think Florida State would probably already be in, considering they lost or they beat LSU, they beat Clemson already and things like that. So beat Miami, who is going to be a ranked team, beat Duke, who's going to be a ranked team. Florida beats Kentucky this week, and then Florida beats Kentucky and then beats Vandy and then beats South Carolina. I mean, they're going to go into that Georgia game like top 15 in the country. Now, I think we all know they're not a top 15 team in the country, but that's going to be another ranked potential win, right? Depending on how bad Georgia and LSU beat them down, and what happens with Arkansas and Missouri. So I think Florida State will be in great shape. If you could get him back for the ACC championship, obviously you'd be even more thrilled. But really having him for the playoff against, you're obviously going to play just the elite of the elite there, right? Whether that's Ohio State or Texas or, Oklahoma looks good. Georgia, obviously. Alabama, if they were to sneak in. You're going to need that depth along the defensive line. And he probably is your, third, fourth best defensive lineman. I really like what Fisk is bringing you. I like Fabo and Farmer. Farmer's probably been your best. But Fabo, Farmer, 1, 2, Fisk, Jackson, 3, 4. I think that's a really nasty lineup. And it, the defensive line then becomes as good as we all kind of predicted it was going to be. I think it's been fine this year. I don't really have a lot of complaints with it, but I think that gives Pat Payton time to continue to grow. I think Edmonds done some good things. I think he had some nice plays this weekend against Clemson, but getting Jackson back absolutely raises the ceiling on what this defense could potentially be and really where this defensive line will be. So, I think that's good news. I think that was awesome that Florida State kind of got that confirmed. Mike Norvell came out and said that this week. We had speculated that might be the case, but just didn't have anything like super, super solid on it. But I think good news there for sure. What else do you guys have? Let's talk whatever you guys want. I've probably got we're gonna go till noon. I didn't want to make this super long. just chat just for the sake of chatting. Heard Jackson will be available for the ACC championship. Yeah, I'd love that. I've heard mixed things there. I think it's kind of gray, but yeah, that'd be awesome if they could, get him in there. So yeah, I'm all about that. What else you guys got? What else do you guys want to talk about? Put some content out this week on the refs in the Clemson game. That was fun. A lot of people liked that a lot. Oh, offensive line health. We can talk about that. Hey, nobody has. I don't know. I'm not feeling the love as much. Again, I was late, and so I'll blame me. But that super chat donation leader on the bottom is up for grabs if anybody wants to go claim that. If you guys have been, I haven't had my phone in here. Oh, my guy Michael got it. All right, Michael got our lead. 31-24. My guy just wanted his spot back down there. Let me go change that. Michael celebrated a birthday this week. Y'all say happy birthday to Michael in the chat. Let's see here. How do I change this around? Michael Harris. Y'all say happy birthday to Michael real quick while I edit this. Offensive line health. That's a good one. Michael went with 31-24. That's fun. I like that. We're supposed to play a sound. Let's see here.
Fire up the war chant and plant the spear.
All right, offensive line health. Let's talk about that as soon as we give some love to Gramco, thegramco.com. You can see it over my, what shoulder is this? Right shoulder. It's backwards for you guys. I know it's the left side of the screen. The Hotbox Studio brought to you by thegramco.com. Thegramco.com, whether you're looking for Delta 8, Delta 9 gummies, whatever you are in the mood for, they will get you taken care of. Make sure that you're supporting them. They've been great partners with us. We've got more coming with them. They were out at the tailgate at Clemson. We're doing another tailgate for Virginia Tech. If you're watching this, go get your tickets for that Virginia Tech tailgate. You guys need to jump on that. In fact, let me go get that link and throw it in the description because tickets for that are going. So you guys need to make sure that you're part of that if you're coming out to the Virginia Tech game. Okay. Offensive line health. I think everybody's kind of good to go. I mean, not kind of good to go. I think we're set. I think that Smith will be back out there once it starts. I think Robert Scott is back in a better spot. I know that there have been questions, comments, concerns, rumors, just around, the health of those guys, how other guys have played, how quickly other guys are adjusting to this play. I know that I think, I don't want to call anybody a miss so far, but I do think that, you could see better play out of some guys, but it is early and you've played some good defensive lines and you've had to just kind of throw some guys into the fire with other guys getting hurt. I'd like to see a little bit more out of a few guys on that offensive line. But as far as health and as far as depth, I do think they're in a pretty good spot. I think that they are trending towards being pretty healthy. I think for the Virginia Tech game, honestly, I wouldn't even care if you sat a couple of guys in that Virginia Tech game. I think you are so much better than them that it's not funny. But I think I think that Virginia Tech game is one that you could probably rest some more guys, but I don't know if you'll need to. I think you're going to be pretty fully healthy, and if you're healthy, you need to go out and make a statement and beat the heck out of them and get some young guys some playing time. Virginia Tech is not good. Like, they are bad. And so I didn't think Boston College was a great team by any means. I think Virginia Tech is much, much worse. If it makes you feel better, to see, well, they don't play till later in the year, but Pitt's not good, and they play Virginia Tech this weekend. Virginia Tech beat Old Dominion, then they lost to Purdue, Rutgers, and Marshall. Coming off of a bye, you need to beat Virginia Tech by 30. ESPN gives you a 96% chance to win that game. You're going to be playing at home. It's a 3:30 kickoff. You just need to go beat their crap in. So what else? What else do we have here? I saw the Clemson stuff. We're not doing any conference realignment stuff, I don't think, until something becomes official. I've always said, through this season, but we'll also see. I really like David Hood, who works for TigerNet.com. I think that he is pretty spot on with most of his coverage. And he says he doesn't believe anything's coming imminently. Reached out to somebody at Florida State and haven't heard back on our end if we think that something is actually happening with Clemson or not. What else you guys got? We got about 5 more minutes. We'll hang out for like 5 more minutes and then let you guys get back to your Friday. South Carolina pushing hard. See, I don't think those teams. People always talk about like Clemson and Florida and others like trying to push back against teams getting in the conference. I don't think that they have any. Like, I don't believe that like Florida could keep Florida State out of the SEC. I don't believe that South Carolina, essentially a nobody in the SEC, could keep Clemson out of. I think Florida could keep us out more than I think South Carolina could keep Clemson out. And I don't even believe that Florida could keep us out. I just think that Florida's way more relevant than South Carolina is. So I don't, even that, I don't think that Florida could keep us out. I don't think that that's a legitimate possibility. I don't think that that's something that the SEC cares about at all. When they see that the numbers that Florida State brings in and they see what Clemson brings in, I don't think they give two craps about what Florida and South Carolina say. This is about business, right? Like this is about money and dollars, and they're not going to say like, oh, well, we don't want to hurt Florida's feelings, or South Carolina. So I just don't think the SEC cares about that at all. Like, that's been said for years and years and years, but I don't think that's gonna matter at all. So, what you guys got? A few more minutes and we'll get out of here. Oh, we got some haters in the chat. Shout out to haters. It's like this mug. Coffee almost at noon. Bold strategy that we got going on here. You're gonna have like 4 cups today, so it's all good. Why not try? Yeah, that's a good question. I think the way that Clemson kind of attacked was to try and force things to the outside. I think you did see Florida State really use the middle of the field, and they have used the middle of the field a ton this year. But the way that Clemson played you kind of forced things to the outside. If they're going to play one-on-one coverage, you're going to throw that up to Johnny and Keon more times than not. Now Jordan's not super sharp, and I think that has to do with the injury right now. But I don't really I don't think other teams are going to be able to play you as effectively as Clemson did in the secondary. Like, nobody else has it close to as good of a defense as Clemson did. The issue with Florida State is that they could very easily be 2-2. I don't know what the relevance there is. You're telling me that Florida State, what do you mean they could be 2-2? Like, Boston College wasn't going to win that game. I know they made it close. I know that freaked everybody out, but BC wasn't going to win that game. Come on. The thing with Florida State is they could be 2-2. That's really cool. But the thing with everybody else in the country is so could they, right? Like, you're telling me Florida State hasn't played their best and they're still undefeated with wins against Clemson and LSU away from Doak. I'll take it. Florida State could be 2-2. I get it, but they're not, right? Who cares? Georgia could have lost to South Carolina. They were down by double digits at halftime. Alabama has a loss, and they were tied with USF in the fourth quarter. USF. So I don't care that Florida State could be 2-2. Texas was up on Wyoming by what? 7 points in the fourth quarter? They pulled away late, got a late pick 6 to make that look better. But I don't think that matters. I don't think that, Florida State could be 2-2. Okay, great. They're not. Notre Dame has a loss. Alabama has a loss. LSU has a loss. Ole Miss has a loss. Tennessee has a loss. Florida has a loss. You know who doesn't have a loss? Us. So I'm really not too worried about what Florida State could be. They haven't played their best, and they're still undefeated. They're still a top 5 team. They still have the best 2 wins in the country, and they got both those wins away from Doak Campbell Stadium. I don't think it matters that Florida State could be 2-2. It just doesn't. Brandon Brown bringing up where Vegas had Florida State to win the ACC championship. Well, congratulations. Vegas was wrong on that. If you look at the odds, they have certainly shifted to where Florida State is now a minus 149 to win the conference. Miami is a plus 650. If you want to know what those implied odds are, minus 149 means that Florida State, minus 149, has a 40% chance to win the conference. And plus 650 means that Miami has, let's take a look, %. Minus 140, 59. I'm sorry, Florida State has a 61% chance. Miami has a 13% chance to win the conference. I know Brandon Brown likes to come in here because all of the Miami shows suck, but I'm glad that he spent a little time with us today so that we could tell him that his team is crap. How much you guys got us beating Miami by this year? Because I think it's still 21. I still think they stink. My man is hurt. He's pressed on us talking about Miami's odds. He brought up the odds from the offseason, but he's mad that we're bringing up Miami's current odds. I like it. So, all right. Hey, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Quick show today. Make sure that you're subscribed, especially you, Brandon. Appreciate you for being a hater. Love you guys so much. Go Noles.